What's going on, everybody? This is Chuck Creekmur, AllHipHop.com, and I'm here with a long, I don't want to say old friend, but we're kind of old friends, right?
And we're kind of old.
Yeah, we're kind of old at this point.
A long-time youthful friend.
Right. Kathy Iandoli. Iandoli.
There it is.
Yeah. Got it. You have like the hardest name.
Only took 2 decades.
Right, right.
Too many vowels.
No, it's so hard. But
well, that's because you call me Catharoo. Like,
I
we don't,
know.
And he's Chuckaroo. We don't have a...
We have nicknames for each other. So, my name is hard to say, but then I'm like, you have like infinitely harder name to pronounce.
Italian girl problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm glad to have you. For those that don't know, Kathy used to work at AllHipHop many moons ago, and you were our alternatives editor.
Yeah.
Right. So we did, all across the board. But,
right.
But we shared common interests outside of hip hop, and a lot of that we brought to the table, like. Who we brought Tori Amos to AllHipHop, right?
Yeah, but the cool part about it was like during that time period, because one of the original Gun Show members just had to represent. But during that time, like we also did a lot of the women in hip hop that were kind of bubbling, but weren't quite there on the mainstream. But we brought a lot of like Lily Allen, Tori Amos, MIA.
Yep.
Rihanna.
Yeah. It was. It was so fun because we just did whatever we wanted.
I know.
Yeah.
But the traffic showed we were right.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So, well, let's just get to it. Like, you have a new book.
Yes.
God Save the Queens: The Essential History of Women in Hip Hop.
Yes.
Perfect. I got it. Nailed it. It's out in HarperCollins.
Day Street Books. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations. This is really your first book that you've written by yourself.
Yes.
Alone.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly hard. I've been working on a book for 3 years, and I just can't imagine. Like, so talk about, first of all, the process of writing this book. What prompted you to write it, and how hard was it?
It's been like a decade in the making to actually get this book out. I mean, when you think about it, like when I actually sat down and officially got this book deal and was like putting everything together, and I'm like a research nerd too, like just wanting to make sure it's obviously very accurate. There was nothing like it.
Right.
Like anything. There was a little bit of coverage of women in hip hop and yes, y'all. But a lot of the hip hop books were just really, there's like a couple pages, there's like a chapter, things like that. So I wanted to make sure that this was kind of this all-encompassing book of over 4 decades of women in hip hop, and just being able to cover just all of the ground, but at the same time making sure that there were just, an exploration of these like kind of pivotal moments that were happening for women in hip hop, and how they contributed to the larger just culture. And I think like I learned a lot of like random things putting this book together, and just how many women were in the room, how many women pioneered so much.
Right.
And then, it's always just kind of passed off to a guy, and then, he'll run with it.
Right.
But putting it together, it was just one of those things where I had this realization that like, not only was it such a long time coming, but there's a lot we just didn't know, What was the most interesting thing that you learned that you didn't already know? Well, I mean, I had read some articles, about Kool Herc with the infamous, party, but I didn't know it was his sister's idea, and that was actually her party.
Right.
Yeah. So it was like Cindy's party, and, Herc was DJing. Yeah. And that night he became a legend. But just the idea that it was essentially her party to pay for her school clothes, something like that, I really wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware of, Moni Love, when she came here from London. All the dudes were like, trying to hit on her. A lot of any famous rapper, Moni was, their target. Right. And it got to a point where she shaved her head and she taped her breasts down. Wow. So that she could go into a room and start rapping and not have them try anything with her. So just like these kinds of stories that you're just like, ugh, that's crazy. And a lot of the stuff, even like the Little Kim stuff, just a lot of like what women had to endure. Right. And it's just a testament to the strength of women, but like particularly Black women. Yeah. You know?
What made you name it God Save the Queens?
Well, in England, there's the whole, God save the queen, protect the queen at all costs, protect royalty, bless royalty. Right. And really, women in hip hop our royalty. So it was just this idea of creating this title that just showed how the most unprotected women need to be protected. Yeah. And also it was kind of play on the idea of like the gods and earths and, you know, just the whole, you know, but then also the irony of the title as if to suggest that women need to be saved.
Yeah, that's dope. I Googled that, by the way. What does this mean? Cool. So what was the, you know, who did you talk to and what was the process in, you know, let me talk to her as opposed to this person?
Well, I cast like the widest net, like who I felt like I should talk to. And, you know, some people gave some really good, extensive like stories. And others just gave like little tidbits and anecdotes. And then, you know, I also pulled from my interviews over the last 2 decades. Right. And, you know, shared some of that insight. Like I spoke to Nicki Minaj, like one of the first interviews she ever did. And, you know, got to talk to her and, you know, I'm speaking with Little Kim, but like, you know, I got Moni Love and Rod Digga. I got Debbie D, one of the original Us girls from Beach Street, to talk and tell her story. I spoke with Bahamadia, Gangsta Boo, Mia X, La Chat. Okay. I got Megan Thee Stallion. She closes my book.
Nice. Yeah. Nice.
So, you know, I spoke to a lot of women and I got their takes on a lot of different things. And I spoke to other women in the industry and just kind of wove together this story. But, you know, I also spoke with Questlove, you know, and spoke with him because, you know, the Roots toured with the Fugees and, you know, the whole story with Eve on You Got Me and being an uncredited verse. So there's actually a really funny story about that in the book too. Nice. And I didn't want to do an encyclopedia. Yeah. I mean, we're in a society where we read tweets. We don't read these 85,000 words that I put together. But I wanted to make it also a fun read. And there's like kind of little anecdotes with myself, like opening the chapters because, you know, I've been in this for a long time, but I'm also just a hip hop fan.
Yeah, you talk about your experiences and we've even after AllHipHop, we've intersected quite a bit. And you talk about a radio station incident where someone calls you the C word. Yeah.
And it wasn't cute. That's almost not the C word.
Yeah, exactly. You are cute, but but that's almost like the worst thing you can call a woman, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, I would say.
Do you want to explain that situation and sort of? I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe just let people read it, but it is sort of. Yeah. It opens the book, so.
It was one of those things where, at that point, I had been in hip hop or working in the music industry for about a decade. Yeah. Right. And it really wasn't being called the C word by the artist that got to me. It was what happened after that. You know, I basically, long story short, I didn't agree to some sort of favor that was asked of an artist on air, just some not a favor from me, but like a favor to get an intern to do something. And you know, I was the director of the urban programming there, you know what I mean? So my rule was my rule, you know, it was for the safety of an employee. And I was called the C word. And when it happened, I ran into the office of the executive in the company. Right. And, you know, he was just very like, well, who's going to respect you? Like, and it was one of those things where it's like, I've been doing this for like 10 years. What do you mean? Right. You know, I think that was almost worse than being called that. Right. You know, because I've seen that person since he called me that, and we've been fine. I mean, he's not forgiven for that. Yeah. But it's like, whatever. But you're being told by someone who literally didn't have my tenure in the industry telling me like, well, what did you expect? Yeah. That was the part where it's like, oh. And it was really during that time period that I was like, I made that decision that I was going to put a book out. Right. And one of the guys who was in the room during that whole scenario, when I was walking out, I had turned to him and I said, you're going to see this in a book one day. And he like reminded me because I was like fact checking that story. So I called a couple people who were there and I was like, can we go over this again? It was like 10 years ago. And he's like, you know, you walked out of that room and you turned to me and you said, this is going to show up in a book one day. And I was like, well, ta-da. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, hip hop is infamously misogynistic and hard on women, you know, really, really hard on women, and actually has been kind of almost from the beginning,
right.
but it got worse after gangster rap. Like just, I mean, like let's just say it is
right.
what it is. You know what I mean? Regardless of the initial thought behind it,
right.
with Ice Cube, and you know he always explained it so eloquently, which honestly respected Cube. I never really agreed with, but
right.
at least he had some sense behind it. What are your thoughts on overall how hip hop has treated its women?
Well, I think to your point with the whole success of gangster rap, what it did was it normalized using the words bitch and hoe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once that became like fun vernacular, and there's women dancing in the clubs,
right,
to being called it, you know, I think that's where things sort of changed.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that I don't think that there was any less misogyny prior, but I just think that how it was expressed was a little more normalized during that period of time. Yeah. And we never really bounced back.
Right.
But I think what happened was, if you're talking like circa 1996, when you had like Little Kim and Foxy Brown and other artists who were sexually expressive and taking ownership of just being like, okay, if like I'm going to express myself before you try to put me down for it.
Right.
But what ended up happening was, if you know, I talk about this in the book, the press coverage around like Little Kim and Foxy specifically during that time, they were called raunchy, they were called sluts, they were called all these things for being expressive and trying to turn around what it was that was happening within the misogyny in hip hop, and then they're being talked down for it.
Yeah.
And if you think about gangster rap, the one thing that was always being challenged was the gun talk. It wasn't the bitch and hoe talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well, how dare you rap about violence when cops are constantly pulling you over and police brutality is rampant in South Central LA? How dare you do that? Yeah. But bitches and hoes are fine. Like, you know what I mean? And I think that was one of those things where it's like, you know, it was misguided anger.
Yeah. There were pockets of resistance here and there, you know.
Sure.
You know, definitely. I you know, I've always been anti, you know, degrading women.
Right.
And I remember I had a moment with somebody who is in the industry, and the song When I Last Night, Baby. What's that song? I literally like blotted out.
Yeah.
It's a Dr. Dre song. No, it's not explosive. Young Buck, don't interrupt our interview. Nate Dogg on the hook. And anyway, long story short, it's like, it ain't no fun. It ain't no fun. Right. Yeah. It ain't no fun. And I'm like, yo, this is the worst song ever. They're talking about past. You know, I'm like, it ain't no fun if the homies can't have them. Like, that's just nasty. But a person I was cool with, who's a woman, I should say, she loved it. She was like, I ain't trying to hear that. Like, that's my song. Like, are women in any way, are they guilty in any way?
I wouldn't say guilty. I think it's just a matter of how you choose to separate the artist from the art. You know? There's certain artists who I have 1,000,001 reasons not to listen to their music because of who they are as people. Yeah. And their songs may reflect some sort of you know, whatever. But I'm less likely to support an artist who I know has a track record of horrible behavior than I am about the content of a song at this point. Sometimes the two connect. Sometimes they completely do, and other times they don't. I mean, there's some artists who sing about peace and love or rap about peace and love, and they're awful individuals. And I think, you know, I mean, I Believe I Can Fly. Yeah. So if for me, it's that point where I mean, I don't recreationally listen to Ain't No Fun, but I mean, I can't say that like I don't have a playlist that has something a little crazy, like, but it is something where, you know, as a woman, you do have to make that kind of decision every time you press play. You know? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I feel like that about hip hop in general. So for me, I'm just like, just the other day, I'm casually thinking, like, I wonder how many people have died in hip hop on record. Like, how many, black people killing black people on record. Mm-hmm. It's like zillions of people. And even though we've, obviously covered that, and I try like to balance that out in my spirit because, with our coverage and so on, because, it just naturally needs balance and other content out there.
Yeah.
This year, a lot of people, there was this whole raging discussion when Jermaine Dupri says they're all strippers or something along those lines. And everybody collectively was like, oh my, what are you talking about?
Right.
Now some people were like, you're not even on the wave of hip hop anymore to say that.
Right.
And then other people were like, you're mansplaining, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts on that? Or what are your thoughts?
I mean, I feel like the internet and social media is just so dangerous because now everyone has thoughts about everything. Mm-hmm. And like, there's like a number of like times a day where I'm just like, nobody needed your hot take. Like you could have just kept watching television or, finishing your lunch or doing something. Right. And it just like fell into that because, Jermaine Dupri has contributed a lot to hip hop.
Absolutely.
He's the reason why we have the Brat.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the She's Dope.
Yeah. I mean, come on now.
Incredible.
Right. But to make that assertion at a time where he hasn't really pushed any woman in hip hop,
right?
I don't know what he was looking at, like what statistics he was checking in marketing meetings, because I have yet to see like the product of his extensive research.
Right.
But then when he turned around and was like, I'm gonna like put all these women together, it's like it was literally like that meme. Nobody, absolutely nobody. Jermaine Dupri, I'm gonna have a female cipher. Like I don't know.
And he's still working on it because we just got an email from him the other day. Well, his people. So,
about this thing that's
he
happening.
Wants to talk about it. You should talk to him.
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, I'd love to have a conversation about it. I'm just curious too, because if he's looking at like this data, I want to see this data that where these things come from. But there's a lot of like unfounded opinions that just kind of infiltrate social media, and we're all guilty of it to a certain extent. And sometimes you'll just say something, and we're in an era where we don't have always the receipts to back it up. And when you were talking about the whole idea of like conflicting opinions when it comes to songs, we would have our gun show meetings. Yeah. We would literally sit and deliberate on what every piece of material that hit the site.
Right.
Places don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's like a lost art.
Yeah.
Now it's like the content, the speed,
Yeah.
And I wish we had that kind of time period again where we can curate and it would allow for a lot more well thought out opinions and a lot of well thought out coverage.
Agreed.
But I'm interested to see what the cipher is.
It's the cipher. No. Shout out to JD. I know he probably feels pretty bad about that, and that's why he's trying to make good in his way.
Listen, I believe that he believes that there's this cipher coming, and if it's coming, I will promote the hell out of it.
All right. Okay. You also worked with Prodigy extensively. Tell people about that. I mean, obviously, I was there some of the time, and Prodigy was one of my favorites. When he died, I felt like I lost a family member. I was like, yo, I'm crying. What's this? What's going on? Talk about the books and your relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I met P. Well, I met Mobb Deep over the years, but I went out to lunch with P right around the time that he got out of prison. And, I was doing an interview, one of his first ones, right when he got out. And we just vibed, like we clicked. One thing about Prodigy is he just has the craziest sense of humor. Like he had a dry sense of humor. Right. And one of those things where his like deadpan delivery with like the Queen's accent and the gruff like voice, and he would just say things, and you're just like, what? Like, and you would just laugh, I mean, our text conversations, sometimes I still look at them because he would send me the most ridiculous memes, or like he would send me a picture of an artist wearing something, and he'd be like, "Yo, cat, come get your friend." Right. And and it would just be like something ridiculous, and I'm just like, "What are you talking about?" Like we would go back and forth, but when we had that lunch, he said to me, I've been thinking of doing kind of like this cookbook or some way to explain what happened to me while I was in prison. Because, you know, he had the SS type of sickle cell anemia, which is the worst, right? He was in constant pain. He had to always just maintain his health and make sure that he watched everything that went into his body. And he was nervous when he went in because he was like, I don't want to die in prison from like malnutrition or from sodium intake and things like that. So he made an effort to use what he can from his commissary and from what his family would send. And a lot of fans sent him stuff too, and create these kind of meals to just make sure he was all right. But also just shed some light on the prison system. Like, I didn't know certain things. Like, I didn't know that in order to get water in prison, you have to fill jugs yourself and carry the jugs. But the easiest thing to get is orange drink and like that fake sweet tea, right? And you could get that, like, you can walk out your door or your cell and get that. But to get water, you have to take a jug, you have to go up like steps and grab a jug and do all these things. And if that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what does. A lot of inmates leave diabetic because all they're drinking all day is orange drink, right? Having kidney disease, all of those things. There's a thing called prison tea where they take the ramen packet and pour it in water and drink it. That thing's got like 2,500 milligrams of sodium.
Absolutely.
You drink that 3 times a day. Like, crazy. And then you wonder, like, there, you know, a lot of people leave. I mean, when you see a lot of people leave prison, you're like, oh, they got swole. No, that's sodium. That's not completely doing pull-ups. You know? And P and I just, you know, we got really close through the process. When the book came out, he wanted me with him. We were able to go to Harvard and Yale and all these places. And then, you know, that following year, which was 2017, he wanted to do more. Like, he wanted to do... We were going to do a musical. Wow. Right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was based like loosely on his life, but then also just on, he had a lot of conflicting opinions on what it was that he was putting out there, that he felt like maybe he was causing people to be violent. Because there was a moment when he was in court before, during his trial. And they asked him if he wanted to cop a plea. And he's like, I didn't do anything. I mean, basically, you know, he had a gun under his seat and cops made it seem like he was like waving it around. They were like, are you sure? And he's sitting in the courtroom and they push out a TV with a VCR. And he's like, a tear came to my eye. He was like, they're going to play my music videos. So he got to this point toward the end of his life where he wanted to somehow just make good on all of that, you know, balance his karma. I knew something was up when he started making peace with everyone. You know, the one that tripped me out was when he and True Life made that peace treaty. I was like, is he okay? I hope he's feeling good. Like that, like that. I mean, it's great. Like that. I think that's like one long standing beef that was just crazy.
Absolutely.
But when he started making all these like peace treaties and squashing all this beef, I was like, something felt weird, right? But he was talking to me like, we should do this, we should do that. We were gonna do a book, his own Decoded, because you know I did the research for Jay-Z's Decoded, and he wanted me to do a book like that with him, and we were working on that, and we were doing all these things. And then he got on Fallon, and you know we were right there. And then he wanted to do a second memoir to my infamous life, which is called The State versus Albert Prodigy Johnson. And he wanted to talk about starting the book the day that he got out of prison, right? And then I remember the day we got these free T-shirts from Harvard. Something about like, it was like one of those like the definition shirts where it says like hip hop, noun, like, you know, whatever. And P and I are like looking at these shirts and he's like, I'll wear this every day, right? And like that day, I was wearing it, right? And I like texted him and I was like, I sent him a picture. I was like, look what I'm wearing for the first time since we got it, like almost a year ago. And no text back. And then I went on social media and I posted the picture. And I was like, yo, P, like, you know, whatever. Because he was one of those guys, like, and I mean, we lived a town away from each other. And I was like, and I knew he was in Vegas, but I was like, maybe he's like sleeping, like maybe, you know. So I was like, wait a minute. So a couple of minutes later, it was Questlove called, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, you know, and another friend of mine called and was like, Nas posted that Prodigy died. And then Freeway called me. It's like I'm getting all these like these artists are hitting me because they knew our friendship, and I'm getting these calls and I'm just like, and I was like, I don't know. And then I'm getting calls from publications. Can you do an interview? And I was like, interview of what? I don't know what's happening. And then come to find out that, you know, he had passed away, and it was too soon, but I feel like P knew he was on a clock. You know, a lot of people don't live to see 40 with that horrible disease. And he wanted to be an advocate for that stuff. You know, I think that there is no coincidence that a disease that only specifically affects Black people gets the least amount of research, you know? And that was something that he wanted to really just focus on, you know, a really underserved research, you know, for that disease. And but, you know.
Yeah. Shout out to P.
Shout out to P.
Shout out to P, one of the greats.
One of the greats, for sure. Yeah.
So I want to pat myself on the back. In 2007, I wrote an article that stated, in hip hop, excuse me, let me start over. I want to pat myself on the back. Take two.
I don't know what it is yet, but
I wrote an article that said hip hop owes women an apology in 2007.
I remember that. 12
and
years
I mean
ago.
it. However, I was going to write another one in 2017, and I was petrified to write it. I was scared to write the article on the anniversary because I didn't know what to say in this era. I want to ask you, how can men do better? What do we need to do to to just do better, period? And for me, again, there's this cancel culture that I feel even if you mean well, you can get in trouble.
Wow. Chuck? Okay. Well, first and foremost, believe women.
Okay.
Right? Like that would be my first leg cramp in these chairs. Sorry. Believe women.
Okay.
You know, that's like, I would say first and foremost. You know, sometimes I think, and that's something that women have to do too, believe other women. There's a lot of men in this industry who are really nice to some women and really terrible to other women. Yeah. But you can have a guy that you know and be really cool with him and not know that how he's treating women is like really problematic. Yeah. So that's first and foremost. Okay. Believe women. Yeah. And just understand that, I don't know, you're talking about now decades. I'm speaking still specifically in hip hop. Right. Because to answer that question on a wider scale, I think is just, you know. And also, you know, I put this in my thank yous, right? And I know you didn't get to that part yet. Right. But I said, I thanked you for acknowledging me as a good journalist and not a good female journalist, right? And I think that men compartmentalize the women in their lives, right? Right. And where it's like some women are respected and other women aren't. Yeah. And I think, you know, put everyone in the respect category. Right. You know? That's my opinion. I think, you know, even outside of like me, I mean, I'm white, you know, in hip hop.
I didn't know that.
You didn't? It's crazy. I mean, but as a white woman in hip hop, you know, I've been given certain privileges, but then I've been given certain punishments, right? So it's a double-edged sword every day. But forget about me. Right. Like, it's Black women who need to first be placed in this position of respect, because they're the ones who are just constantly being undermined and disrespected and never put in that category of respect. You know, and I think that's the thing, because, you know, it's, even when I was doing the book, just thinking about what women went through, what Black women went through, you know, having to be random things. Like, when I talked to Trina, she was told that she was too expensive to tour because she was going to wear makeup.
Right. Yeah. That's why 50 said he cut Olivia.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So you mean to tell me, and like, I want to hear if that argument is still intact now, because when everyone is on stage wearing, you know, Maison Margiela and, you know, an MCM backpack or whatever, like tell me, because, you know, Trina was like, I'll do my own makeup to get on that stage, you know. But I think talking about makeup is like, there's way more severe things that you're referencing. But I think just, if there is a position where women are made to like feel uncomfortable, kind of, you know, believe them. Listen, like, another thing you should pat yourself on the back for. My first interview, when I was called a chickenhead, remember at SOBs, you probably don't even remember this, where it was my first interview for AllHipHop. And I went downstairs to do this interview with this group. And they had just been released from their label, so they were free agents. Right. And they came to me, like, I came to them. I was like, hi, I'm here for this interview for AllHipHop. It was the first story you gave me. Right. And one of their guys came and put me in this other room with all these other women. And when I came back out, like, with my little recorder and my 555 soul outfit, they were like, didn't you listen? The Chicken Head Convention's that away. Wow. And I remember I got home, I left. Yeah. And I called you. You didn't know me. You didn't know me from anyone. You let me pitch a story and whatever. And you said to me, you're like, this needs to get out. Write a think piece about it. Or it wasn't called a think piece back then. I think it was like editorial. But you were like, write a thing. And I was like, I can't have that be my AllHipHop debut. And we just kind of left it. But I remember you telling me you didn't care if those guys didn't talk to you. You didn't care if those guys said something bad about you. Right. I could have written that. Right. I probably should have written it. But in 2019, I would have written it. Right? Definitely. But you were the one who was like, no, say it. Do what you got to do. Yeah. And just keep that same energy. Okay. Like, okay. You know what I mean? Right. Like, keep that 20-year-old energy. Okay. Like that, you know, you were doing it before it mattered and before it was a hashtag. So just keep doing that. And I think that's the best advice I can give to you specifically. Okay. Well, thanks. We definitely will. And this has been a great year for women overall. Like, I'm just in heaven. Like, I mean, you know, not getting my perv on or anything, but I like everything from Megan Thee Stallion to there's a lot of underground women in hip hop now too that I enjoy, and I wish they could be uplifted a little bit. Right. What do you think about that in context of this specific year? I think for the first time in a long time, we have just this kind of roster, you know, this whole team of women who are doing things and showing up on songs and making real moves and getting along. Yeah. All these things, right? I think it's beautiful, and I think it's very necessary that we still have a mainstream and an underground. And I think that that's just that's the spirit of hip hop. To suggest that everybody should be mainstream or everybody should be underground is a little weird to me, right? And I guess we can thank, like, you know, the 1997 twist for that, where post shiny suit era, right. You know, when we had a raucous, but then we also had, you know, Puffy and them. We even have Rico Nasty. Like, I love Rico Nasty. I love Rico Nasty. She's like Tierra Whack. Yeah. Like, and then we still have artists who have remained consistent. We have Rhapsody. Absolutely. You know? Oh my gosh, her new album is incredible. I love Rhapsody. Trying to get her in here. It's kind of hard now. I know, but you know, come on, rap. No, figure it out. She's awesome. Just, you know, and a good person too. You know, but I think it's beautiful. I mean, my biggest concern is what happens once women aren't the trending topic. Yeah. You know, I I feel like the moment is now that, you know, women are getting what they deserve in the way of fame with hip hop. Mm-hmm. It's just got to stay that way. Yeah. It can't be like, you know, first we had mumble rap, then we had SoundCloud rap, now we have women rap. Right. You know, like right. I want to make sure that this is just really women who are artists, you know, like the gender pronoun is just a part of it. Yeah. And it's not absolutely. Just a part of this, like a subgenre. Yeah. You know what I mean? Definitely. I think 2020 will teach us some lessons and give us some more insight as to what the environment is looking like, because now it's just a lot of cool things. I mean, to see Megan and Nicki on a song together in a video, like
it was once upon a time where if there was one and only one, and then someone else might try, and then they had to beef. Mm-hmm. and it was like ridiculous.
I mean, people love a good cat fight. Yeah. And it was like it just drummed up these kind of like oil wrestling, like, you know, images in people's minds, like to see women fight with each other. And it was just absurd. But I don't think that every woman has to get along either. Right. Like, I don't think every man in hip hop gets along. I mean, I know they don't. No. Right. But I think to see, like, I was at the freshman shoot for XXL, and to see Megan and Tierra Whack and Rico like hanging out, like it was beautiful. And then tweeting at each other afterwards. It wasn't about who can push through to the, like, just being able to do those things. But most importantly, when Megan walked in to that shoot, the way the guys, and it wasn't like looks driven, it was clout driven. It was respect. Like, it was absolutely, they were running to get photos with her. And it's like, because they should. Because, you know. Shout out to Megan.
Shout out to Megan. And she's in school too. I was like, I know. I think she's, you know, sometimes I'm like, are you really in school? But then I kept seeing it. I'm like, she's really in school.
She does homework on Instagram and everything.
Right. That's crazy. All right. Any final words for God Save the Queens, the essential history of women in hip hop?
Just that I hope everyone likes it, and that it was a really long time coming. Yeah. And specifically, I hope women in hip hop love it, you know. And to the women I couldn't include, you know, that was my big bummer. Like, there's a lot of artists I really, really wanted to include, and it wasn't. It doesn't suggest I don't know that they exist or that there was no research, because you know me and my like deep cuts. Of course. But you know, I hope even those women that their names weren't mentioned in the book just know that, like, you were there. And I hope everyone likes it.
All right. Well, congratulations. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
I hate saying that, but I am.
Thanks, Chuck.